A cold wind swept across the plains as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, leaving the land painted in muted gold and blue. Flint Carter rode his tired bay horse along the lonely trail leading toward his cabin, the saddle creaking in rhythm with each step. He wasn't expecting company that evening. He never expected company at all. Folks whispered that Flint preferred cattle to people, and they weren't wrong. After losing his parents young and his brother to a mining accident, solitude had become a friend he trusted more than any living soul. So when he spotted a small figure sitting on a boulder near the creek and a frail older woman leaning against a willow, he pulled his horse to a halt, squinting through the dusk. The boy looked up first. His clothes were dusty, his cheeks red from the wind, but his chin lifted in that stubborn way only children manage. "Ma'am," Flint called out to the woman, "you too lost." The woman lifted her head slowly, her voice soft and tired. "We were headed for town, my grandson and I, but the wagon wheel snapped and the horse ran off. We've been walking since dawn." Flint studied them. The boy couldn't have been older than 9, and the grandmother looked far too fragile to be trudging miles alone. The boy stepped forward. "I can work for food if you let Grandma rest." That hit Flint hard straight in a place he'd thought long dead. He swung down from his saddle. "No need for work tonight. Come on. My cabin's close." The boy blinked as if surprised kindness even existed. The grandmother hesitated, but exhaustion won. Flint helped her onto his horse and gestured for the boy to walk beside him. As they made their slow way toward his cabin, Flint couldn't help glancing down at the woman. Something about her posture, her careful speech, even the way she held herself, it didn't fit someone used to hardship. But he pushed the thought aside. He didn't take and guess to pry into their lives. He did it because leaving them out there would have felt like leaving a piece of his old self behind. When they reached the cabin, Flint coaxed a fire to life and set stew on the stove. The boy explored every corner of the room with bright curiosity. "I'm Eli," he announced suddenly. "And this is my grandma Ruth." Flint nodded. "Flint Carter." Eli grinned. "That sounds like a cowboy name." Flint shrugged. "I suppose it is." Ruth settled into a chair, warming her hands. "Mr. Carter, you've given us more kindness in 1 hour than many have offered in a lifetime." Flint shook his head. "Ain't kindness. Just decent living." But Ruth saw something in him, something he didn't see in himself. As they ate, she watched him carefully, as if measuring the weight of his silence. Afterward, Eli asked if he could sleep near the fire. Flint pulled out extra blankets. The boy curled up instantly, asleep before Flint even set down the last quilt. Ruth watched her grandson with quiet affection. "He's all I have left." Flint poured her a cup of tea. "Town isn't far. I can take you there in the morning." Ruth gave him a grateful smile. "Thank you. Though I hope we're no trouble." Flint shook his head. "Trouble's a rattlesnake in your boot? You two ain't that." Ruth chuckled softly an elegant sound, too refined for the tiny cabin. Flint ignored it. That night, after they slept, he sat on the porch staring at the stars. Something tugged at his mind. Their clothes weren't cheap. The boys' boots were well made, and the grandmother's speech was gentle but educated. They didn't seem like lost wanderers, but people kept secrets. He of all men understood that. The next morning, Ruth woke with more color in her cheeks, though her steps were still slow. Eli helped Flint feed the horses, peppering him with questions. "How many cattle you own? Do you ride every day? Have you ever roped a mountain lion?" Flint snorted. "Son, anyone who tries to rope a mountain lion deserves what they get." Eli laughed like that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. When breakfast was done, Flint saddled the horse and hitched his old wagon. But as Ruth attempted to climb aboard, her knees buckled and she crumpled. Eli cried out. Flint caught her just in time. Her breathing was shallow, her skin drained of color. "Grandma?" Eli's voice trembled. Flint knelt beside her, panic hitting him in a way he hadn't felt since he lost his brother. "She's dehydrated and tired. Needs rest, not travel." Ruth tried to protest, but Flint shook his head. "You're staying put? Doctor can come here." Ruth resisted weakly, but she didn't have the strength to argue. Eli stayed by her side while Flint rode into town. The doctor agreed to visit, but when the doctor arrived at Flint's cabin and saw Ruth, his eyes widened in recognition. "Mrs. Whitlock?" Flint turned sharply. "You know her?" The doctor nodded. "Everyone knows her. Widow of Harold Whitlock." Flint froze. Harold Whitlock, the richest rancher and landowner in 3 counties. A family with business influence stretching across half the region. Flint looked at Ruth frail, gentle Ruth, and it struck him like a blow. She wasn't just anybody. She was the widow of the wealthiest man in town. And Eli Zaire, the doctor treated Ruth, assuring Flint she just needed rest. When he left, he pulled Flint aside. "Their estate has been sending riders looking for them for 2 days. The family's in a panic." Flint frowned. "Why were they walking alone?" The doctor hesitated. After Mr. Whitlock died, his relatives tried to take control of everything. Mrs. Whitlock fought them in court. They threatened her, pressured her, made life near impossible. She left the estate to protect the boy until she could settle things legally. Flint felt heat rise in his chest, not anger at Ruth, but at the cruelty she'd endured. He returned inside. Ruth lay resting, her hand in Eli's. She looked up at Flint with tired, apologetic eyes. "I didn't mean to deceive you." Flint shook his head. "You didn't." Eli looked between them. "Are they going to take Grandma away?" Flint knelt beside the boy. "Not while I'm around." Something fierce settled inside him, an oath that felt older than words. Over the next days, Ruth recovered. Flint taught Eli to ride, to fish, to throw a lasso. The boy adored him, following him like a shadow. Ruth watched with a quiet smile, seeing something in Flint she hadn't seen since her husband-in-law, man with a good heart and the strength to protect what he cared about. But trouble came sooner than expected. Riders approached one afternoon, 3 men in fine coats, hard expressions on their faces. Whitlock relatives? Eli grabbed Flint's sleeve, trembling. Flint stepped forward, hand resting casually near his holster, not threatening, just ready. "We're here for Mrs. Whitlock and the boy," one man barked. "Family business?" Flint stood solid. "Maybe you didn't hear. They're under my care." The man sneered. "You think your little patch of dirt scares us? Ain't the dirt you should be scared of." The man's eyes narrowed. "Stand aside, cowboy." Flint didn't move. "No." The men exchanged glances. One reached toward his coat. But before he could draw anything, the cabin door opened and Ruth stepped outside, steady and composed. "That's enough," she said firmly. "Flint has shown more decency than any of you." The men stiffened. "Aunt Ruth, the estate," she interrupted, "is legally mine until the court decides otherwise. And I will not be bullied into returning with snakes who care more about money than family." Eli stepped beside her. "We're staying with Flint?" The men looked furious, but knew they were defeated for now. "This isn't over," one muttered before turning their horses and riding off. Flint watched them disappear, his jaw tight. Ruth touched his arm lightly. "Thank you. You don't owe me thanks. I owe you more than, you know." Days turned into a week, and a quiet bond grew, one Flint didn't expect, didn't seek, but welcomed all the same. Then one morning, a grand carriage arrived, not hostile riders, but true friends of the Whitlock family, people Ruth trusted. They'd come to bring her home safely, under proper protection. Ruth looked at Flint with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "We must return." But I don't want this to be goodbye. Eli clung to Flint. Can we come back? Can we see you? Flint swallowed hard, unused to the ache in his chest. I reckon I'll be here. Ruth stepped closer. Flint, when this legal mess settles, when things are stable, I would like you to visit. Stay with us. You've become important to Eli and to me. Flint's heart stumbled. He tipped his hat. You're welcome here anytime. As Ruth climbed into the carriage, Eli stuck his head out the window. Flint, we'll come back. Grandma said we're gonna rebuild everything, and you're part of it now. Flint watched them disappear down the trail, the wind carrying faint echoes of Eli's excited chatter. The cabin felt quieter than ever, but Flint knew deep in his bones this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something he'd long thought impossible, a family he didn't expect, and a place in the world he never believed he deserved. And somewhere beyond the hills, Ruth and Eli were thinking the same.